What's going on YouTube? It's Deej, back again with another video, and today coming at you with yet another 2023 NFL mock draft. 3 rounds. Today we're talking round 1, tomorrow will be round 2, Sunday will be the 3rd round video. And hey, if you're watching this Friday video, the day of its publishing, it's the last day of March, and then once the calendar turns, you can cement us into draft season. We're into the month of April, and that brings about a ton of excitement. And actually, on that note, I did want to announce and I guess make officially known that I am going to be doing a watch party at least for the first round of the NFL draft on April 27th at Thursday night. And then I'm hoping to have my buddies who are going to be with me for the first round stick around and partake in day 2. So that way we can cover the entire, top 100 and a few more picks of the NFL draft. To me, that's where you make and break your draft, whether it's going to be a positive grade or a negative grade. And really, to me, the reason I want to do the Friday portion of it too is I think the strength of this draft class is round 2 and round 3. There's not a whole lot of blue chip talent. There's a ton of guys that go, names 31 through 63 that are all really, really good players, and I think present a ton of value there in round 2, and the same thing can be said about round 3. So hopefully going to do the Friday video, but go ahead and circle your calendars. We'll be live, and hope to have you with us for the watch party on Thursday night. But in regards to today's video, hopefully you all enjoy. Hit that like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new. And, of course, leave a comment down below in the comment section. Who is your favorite team? Do you like the pick I gave your squad? Do you like the weekend haul that I give your team? And, of course, who goes too high? What am I crazy about? And who falls too low? Where am I wrong in this mock draft? But with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into it with the Carolina Panthers taking C.J. Stroud at 1. I'm not going to change it up here. I do feel like they have that leaning towards Stroud versus Young. I've heard that they're going to, go ahead and evaluate the entire class, but, doing your due diligence is different than having a lean. And I think they're heavily leaning towards Stroud. Comparing him to Young, he's got a little bit better of an arm. He's got the prototypical frame, and he does come from an offense where C.J. Stroud's processing ability was fully put on display. You could argue the same was true for Justin Fields, but with Fields' running ability, he creates a little bit more of an open throw window because defenders have to account for his legs, and a lot of times you're playing a spy, so you're taking a guy out of coverage. Stroud didn't really utilize his legs as much, so when he's moving the ball, more often than not, it's him looking for a chunk play in the air. Great job keeping the eyes downfield, but I'm interested to see, once he gets to the NFL level, will he open up how much he uses his legs? Because that, I've often said he's kind of Jared Goff with maybe a little bit more mobility, but if he starts forcing defenses to respect that 5 and 6 yard scamper when nothing else is open, takes a defender out of coverage, that's when he becomes a really, really interesting player because, man, he's the most accurate passer in this class. Like I said, pretty solid arm and a very good processor. So hopefully we get to see that rushing ability a little bit more put on display at the NFL level, because then I feel that much more sure about him being the number 1 pick. But that being said, if it was up to me, the pick would be Bryce Young. To me, he's in a clear QB tier of his own. Yeah, he's small. Yeah, he's lightweight. I get all those concerns. And I could also see where, like a team like Houston, bringing over San Francisco's former pass game quarter, Bobby Slowick. He's going to be their OC. They run a lot of quick game. They run a lot of that West Coast concepts. And, a smaller guy might be a little bit more concerning because he's throwing over the middle of the field. He's throwing that underneath stuff, and it could be bad at the line of scrimmage. I understand that. But to me, talking about the durability concerns, the guy's so slippery in the pocket, and he has such a great feel for the game, which is such an intangible thing we can't really quantify. But he does have that feel for the game, and it feels like it comes through on tape. And again, the pocket, mobility and elusiveness and just how slippery he is, I think that will be enough to keep him upright and avoid some of those durability issues that could come to arise. And then for the quick game stuff, I think he's got enough arm angle slots in which he varies that angle in which he throws at enough to be able to find some windows. And he's also just a smart guy. And again, the feel for the game is there, and that's more what I'm concerned about. We'll figure out how we get past those defensive linemen's hands going up in the air. So to me, Bryce Young's the guy in this class for the quarterbacks. But I've been saying for a while now, 4 quarterbacks should go in the top 10. I think this is a really, really good quarterback class. I'm not surprised Hendon Hooker's catching some first-round hype. I'm still a big Tanner McKee guy. I just think this is a solid quarterback class we got in our hands this year. That takes us to the Arizona Cardinals. No real surprise here. Will Anderson. I think next week I might think about a trade where Seattle moves up to 3. I know Seahawks fans might not be crazy about that because they're a team that is more interested in taking in assets versus giving them out to other teams, especially a division rival. But to get Will Anderson, it might be enough to entice that. So if you're a Seahawks fan, let me know what you think about that hypothetical trade. But for Will Anderson going to Arizona, a team that lost Zach Allen, lost Byron Murphy, has Budda Baker, but And, Isaiah Simmons has kind of gotten better over the course of his career, but they don't have that blue chip guy that the defense, rotates around. He is the gravitational pull. And Will Anderson has that type of potential. Can win with speed, power, plays bigger than 245, pretty good against the run. But you're making this pick at 3 because Will Anderson steps on the field and you feel confident about him being a guy who gets you double-digit sacks year in and year out. And the Cardinals just don't have that type of superstar on the roster right now. So it makes a ton of sense, though I would like to see Arizona move back. And then if that means settling for Christian Gonzalez or Tyree Wilson or something along those lines, I'm okay with it. Go ahead and get more picks. And let's really kickstart this rebuild by adding some younger talent to the roster. At pick number 4, I'm going to have the Indianapolis Colts take Anthony Richardson. And I know they added Gardner Minshew, but again, I've said this so many times now, so I apologize if you're tired of hearing me say it, but I'd just rather see the kid play. To me, he looks like someone who's only played 1 year. And with his rushing ability, he raises the floor of the offense. Case in point, look at Jalen Hurts. And I've long been a big Jalen Hurts supporter, and I've been higher on him than most. And we saw it with Shane Steichen, who is now the Indianapolis Colts head coach, where you lean into Hurts' rushing ability. It raises the floor of the offense, but it also buys that guy time to grow as a passer. And we even saw a little bit of this with Josh Allen in Buffalo. And hey, everyone throwing out the Josh Allen comp to Anthony Richardson. Let's go ahead and use it here. Maybe the same situation is applicable here. Maybe you want to have Gardner Minshew start the first, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks, so Anthony Richardson is comfortable in the playbook. That's a little different than, I think this guy isn't ready to play. To me, go ahead and get him out there and play. The only way he's going to get better from, an inexperienced standpoint is by gaining experience and by being out there. So once he's comfortable with the playbook, I'd like to see him play. And if he goes to Indianapolis, Shane Steichen, we've already seen him work his magic with Justin Herbert, and then more applicable to this situation, what he did with Jalen Hurts and raising the floor of the offense, leaning into the rushing ability of that quarterback, buying them time to grow as a passer. That's the same thing we saw from Hurts, and I think he could work that same magic with Anthony Richardson. Then at pick 5, I'm going to have Tyree Wilson be the pick here for Seattle. I know this is one I've done so many different times, but like I've said 1,000 times, he's a different edge body than Darrell Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe. He brings so much more length, so much more size, and a much more potent strength profile to the table. So to me, he's the guy they're missing, and that has been the one position they have not really addressed so far yet this offseason. I think at 5, you're hoping Anderson falls to you, but if not, Tyree Wilson just kind of screams Seattle with, 86-inch wingspan. He just has all those traits that typically have been Seahawks kind of, darlings. So I think this fit makes a lot of sense based off what they've done this offseason, but also based off their previous track record. So sorry, Seattle fans. I know this is another one of those mocks where it's like, oh, they have a stake in Tyree Wilson. It's a little boring, but at least you do have another first-round pick to stick around, and some exciting things that could be done there. Then it takes us to Detroit at pick 6, but I'm actually going to have a trade here. And, we're into the season where I need to stop and deter away from fun trade ideas versus things that are more realistic, and that will really start next week. But I wanted to throw this trade out and maybe future 4th or somewhere there about. The trade goes through, maybe it's a future 3rd here, but Tennessee moves up 5 spots, gives up a 3rd this year, and you know what? I'll go ahead and make it a 3rd next year just because we know it's a quarterback, so it's going to come at a little bit of a more steep premium. So a 1st and 2 3s. Now I know Titans fans are going to be like, really? A team that's going through a mini retool or a mini rebuild, more so retool. Why are we giving up picks? Well, it's to go get your future franchise quarterback. So, look, Malik Willis was my QB1 last year and a bad quarterback class. My ideology was go swing for the fences. Malik Willis has a long way to go. But if it works out, the guy could be really, really special. Last year, he did not look ready. And, I said there was going to be a lot of work, but that looked like a lot more work than I even anticipated. And, I get the argument where you already have Ryan Tannehill in the roster, but Mike Vrabel really does not sound committed. He kind of talks, he's almost like the guy that that has a girlfriend but doesn't really talk about his girlfriend at the bar, you know what I'm saying? That's Mike Vrabel right now with Ryan Tannehill. And the benefit of moving on from Tannehill would have been a month ago, right? You shed that, cap space and then make more moves in free agency. So I understand it from that standpoint, but also maybe that creates a situation where you trade Malik Willis, Tannehill plays out this upcoming season, and then Will Levis takes over as a starter. To me, though, this is a team that is going through a retool, and shedding Tannehill's salary cap and that cap hit is the most paramount thing. But also, you're getting a guy with a ton of tools, a lot of traits, and you got Tim Kelly coming in as the OC, worked with Davis Mills, was there with Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. This is a guy who's worked with quarterbacks earlier in their career. Do I think they brought him in for this specific reason? No. I just think he's an OC that's bounced around, and those things I like about him, things that I don't like about him. Maybe he gets that much better in Tennessee, and, they had to move on from Todd Downing. But getting back to the point here, you get the quarterback position right, and all those miniature retools. And when I say what I mean when I say that, rather, they lost a guard, picked up a guard, lost a tackle, picked up a tackle, lost a linebacker, picked up a linebacker. They're just going back and forth and just trading names at the same position group. So it feels like they want to stay competitive, but they're kind of reworking a little bit more in Mike Vrabel and Ron Carthon's image for the roster. And I think quarterback could be in play here too. And do I think they move up? No. But if Levis falls to 11, I think it's a little more realistic. And that's really the point I want to drive home here. If Levis makes it to 11, I don't think he should. But if he does, I think the Titans are taking a hard look there and saying, is this the best thing for our franchise? And it's hard to say that it's not. But I like the idea of them moving up here. A couple more picks going to Detroit. And hey, if it only costs you 2 threes to get your future franchise quarterback, in the grand scheme of things, that's a very small price to pay. All right, next up, Las Vegas Raiders. This one I have Jalen Carter come off the board. I'm trying to mix and match where I have Carter go. And for a while now, I've been trying to give the Raiders an interior disruptor, and boy, oh boy, is that Jalen Carter. He's an immediate impact in the run game, but also big-time bolster that pass rush that last year was kind of Max Crosby, and Max Crosby doing it by himself. And we've seen in the NFL, like, the force multiplying effect that interior rushers have. Jeffrey Simmons, Aaron Donald, just to name a few, and then there's plenty of others. Dexter Lawrence last year, Christian Wilkins in Miami. And, man, Max Crosby's so good, I don't know if he needs help, but if you had a Jalen Carter right there, that would free up Max Crosby to be that much more dangerous, and maybe it could be a catalyst to kickstart and get Chandler Jones to turn the clock back to where he was 2-3+ years ago. So, no guarantee it does, but in the event that Chandler Jones can't turn back the clock, this team needs a second impact pass rusher, and Jalen Carter, without a doubt, could definitely be that. But also, I think you get some run game benefits out of this move. And again, to me, away from the off-field situation with Carter, he's the best non-quarterback in this class. And, you know, him and Anderson are 1A, 1B. I think Carter, to me, is 1A. But because of the off-the-field uncertainty, that's why I have Anderson going ahead of him here. Anyways, let's move on to pick number 8, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to give them Christian Gonzalez. I'm just in love with the idea of Christian Gonzalez on one side, AJ Terrell on the other side. Oh, and Jesse Bates over the top. Like, that is crazy. And I'm still a big Richie Grant believer, especially now where you bring in Bates. He's going to play that over the top free safety. That means Grant's going to transition to the strong safety role, where I really think that's where his skill set is best suited. So all of a sudden, that secondary in Atlanta is starting to look a little scary, especially if they could land someone like a Christian Gonzalez. Could go to Von Witherspoon, but to me, Gonzalez has a relatively high floor. Witherspoon probably has the highest floor, but Gonzalez isn't far behind, while also giving you 6'2", an awesome athletic profile, and tons of traits to work with, and probably the highest upside of any of the corners in this year's class. So to me, he's worth making this as the pick at pick number 8. Give that secondary another boost and just make them a really scary unit. And then we'll go edge in the second round and try to bolster that pass rush. All right, next up, the Chicago Bears at pick 9. This is going to be Paris Johnson Jr. No real surprise here, right? Now, this could be Peter Skoronski. I've heard that the Bears are in on Skoronski, kind of a local kid of sorts at Northwestern, and I get that. And I've said plenty of times, I think Skoronski can play anywhere in the offensive line 1 through 5. And I'm actually going to reiterate that point here with the next selection with Philadelphia. But talking about Pierce Johnson Jr. here, I made him the pick at 9 because to me, he is the best offensive tackle. So I am opting for my board versus what I think maybe the Bears' lean is right now with Skoronski over Paris. But the one downside here is Paris versus, Braxton Jones, who's going to flip over the right side. I think it would end up being Paris, just because he played right guard 2 years ago at Ohio State. He's already had to make that flip with his body and his whole movement once in college, and maybe he could revert back and play that right tackle spot. I'd rather use a top 10 pick on a left tackle and use my 5th rounder to play on the right side, but both tackle positions are equally valuable, so it's really not that big of a deal. More importantly here, it's about adding another bookend tackle and hope that Braxton Jones takes that another step forward in year 2, because I think he wasn't bad as a rookie, but add Paris Johnson in the mix and let's get a solidified tackle duo. And then if they still like Tevin Jenkins, if there's still hope there, my thinking is, because I'm not going to go into our offensive line, so I want to address this up top. I'm going to go tackle here. Let's move Tevin Jenkins back inside to guard, and then let's move Cody Whitehair from guard to center, where he's played before in his career. So that's kind of my mindset here with this pick. But they could also go in a different direction here at 9, like if Jalen Carter fell here, and then add into our offensive line later, and then maybe we'll see what Tevin Jenkins looks like at tackle. I feel better about it if it's Paris Johnson Jr. and Braxton Jones. Anyways, long point aside, like I said, Peter Skoronski is the next pick going to the Philadelphia Eagles. To me, he's, slot him in. He's your Isaac Seumalo replacement. And then in a couple years' time, when Lane Johnson's going to inevitably retire or have so many injuries that you just can't count on him being a starter, Skoronski slides over one more spot and he's your right tackle of the future. This is Tyler Smith and what the situation was supposed to be in Dallas, just on the opposite side of the offensive line in Philadelphia. Right guard replacement for Seamalu, keep a strength to strength. Cam Jurgens could play guard, but sub 300 pounds, I'm thinking that's center only, and he'll take over for Kelsey in another year's time. And then, Skoronski plays guard for a year, maybe two, and then becomes your right tackle of the future. Then you readdress into your offensive line a little later on. So Levis is done, and it feels like Howie Roseman, right? It's offensive line, it's defensive line. That's what he wants to take in the first round, and that's exactly what we give him here with their first of 2 first-round picks. So now with the Detroit Lions at 11. So I have to preface this. So the trade back, I feel like I've earned some goodwill with Lions fans, but I'm about to really probably piss a lot of you guys off here in the first round, because I'm going to go double offense. But be sure to come back tomorrow, because I assure you, I'm going to double up on offense here at 11 and then 18. But I got you an extra third rounder this year, extra third rounder in 2024, and we're going to go defensive heavy tomorrow. And you've done a lot in free agency to where I think you can buy yourself some time. This pick's about to be a little complicated because Marvin Jones has been signed, but it's a small 1-year deal. Think 2 years down the line. Quentin Johnston could be Marvin Jones and then some. You're talking about adding, and also he could be DJ Chark, who they had on the roster last year, let walk this offseason, but he could be DJ Chark and then some, because talking about 6'4", 208 pounds. You're talking about low 4.4 speed and awesome satellite yards after the catch ability. And really, if Quentin Johnston just runs a DK Metcalf route tree, and I'll talk about why that fits him in just a moment, but if he goes posts and then the slants as like the underneath counter, the inside counter, if you want to steal like a pass rush term, then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown as like this volume slot guy, and then Jameson Williams, who also has an abundance of speed and can take the top off the defense. Talking about 2 speedsters clearing out a ton of defensive backs, letting Amon-Ra St. Brown make that job that much easier, which that guy doesn't need any help because he's already a freak. But talking about Johnston here, going back to that route tree, I legitimately think that's really all he needs, right? I think some people have kind of poo-pooed on his ball skills. I don't think they're really that bad. Not always put on display, sure, but I kind of go back to the situation. How many times do he get those opportunities? And also, it's Max Duggan. Like, it's not like he's playing with Caleb Williams or anything like that. But that being said, go balls, because he's got the speed, the size, and to me, he's got a little bit of that contested catch ability. I think he's good in the air. He's got good body control. Posts, another way of doing the same thing, just attacking a different part of the field. And then, just like DK Metcalf, his slant is so lethal, and he's got a comeback off of it too. But like that comeback and that slant counter are so deadly that he gets DBs to still have to respect those moves. And then, in turn, he gets that over the top long ball. And I think Quentin Johnston can do the exact same stuff. I know he doesn't have an expansive route tree, but I've just described 4 routes to you that I think make Quentin Johnston a really fun fit in this Detroit offense. Him, Jameson Williams, the speed, vertical base receivers on the outside, and then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown doing what Amon-Ra St. Brown does from the inside. And like I said, we're going to go offense at pick 18. And basically, I'm just giving toys to Ben Johnson, who last year emerged as one of, if not maybe the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. I wouldn't go that far, but I think he's in the conversation for top 5, maybe top 10, based off of what we saw last year. So let's give him more toys to play with here. All right, let's move on to pick 12. The Houston Texans are going to take Lucas Van Ness. I've toyed around with Nolan Smith here, so I wanted to flip back to the other one. I don't want to make every mock the exact same week in and week out, right? So Van Ness gives you a little bit more of a power profile, a little more beef, and maybe he could just play inside too, right? Like maybe you get him up to 290, 295, and he's an interior rusher. I kind of like the idea of him being an outside-based edge and then flexibility to move inside. So 270, maybe 275, up to 280 could be the right weight for me. But great power rusher, and for Houston, it's just like you need an answer. So whether it's Nolan Smith or Lucas Van Ness, whichever one of those guys you think is going to turn that pass rush into something that scares teams week in and week out, that's what you got to go with here. This is a team that still could use some work in the trenches, but with the addition of Shaq Mason, I think I'm going to hold on offensive line. Additionally, Peter Skoronski off the board. That would have been maybe the fit I could roll with here. But let's go ahead and get this team some edge rush. That's been a hot pick of mine here at 12. Quentin Johnston would be interesting if he was available. But instead, let's go defensive line. Let's get some pass rush. When Jerry Hughes is leading the way in your pass rush department, you've got to change that, especially when you're a young and ideally up-and-coming team. So let's go ahead and try to find that answer for, 5 years down the line. Who's going to be that guy that makes the big play for us in a big game, shutting down the opponent's drive, and maybe Van Ness develops into that guy. Next, we're going to have the New York Jets take Broderick Jones. Big body, great strength, but also good movement skills. So he kind of perfectly fits that wide zone blocking scheme that has, typically been Nathaniel Hackett's calling card. And then him plus Mekhi Becton, if they keep Becton, those are 2 absolute anchors on both ends of the offensive line. And if you're going to get Aaron Rodgers, that's going to be something he wants to see. So I think this makes sense to appease Rodgers. I think it makes sense to fit the offense, and it's obviously an area of need. And then Dwayne Brown, he's this 38-year-old swing tackle. I think that's fine. Or they do move on from Mekhi Becton, and Dwayne Brown becomes a starter for one more year, or Max Mitchell is a starter if you really believe in him. But he also missed time last year with injuries. So, yeah, I think this helps bring a little bit more certainty. It's been pretty much off the tackle the whole way through with me and the Jets, so no real surprise here. I do think Broderick Jones is a really nice fit for that offense. Next, the New England Patriots. I'm going to take Joey Porter Jr. It's actually been quite some time since I gave the Pats a corner. I know they brought back Jonathan Jones, and they draft Marcus Jones in the third last year. He's kind of a nickel corner only. Jack Jones with a nice story. He's a fourth-round pick, but I just think about how good that defense could be if they had like a legit shutdown number one guy. And Joey Porter Jr. definitely could be. And whether this team wants to play more zone and like, hey, put Joey Porter Jr. pressing a guy at the line of scrimmage, let him sit in a squat zone and command the line of scrimmage there in like a cover two concept, he'll be great. And again, because 34-inch arms, 6'2.5", like he's going to give people troubles getting off the line. But I also think he's a good enough athlete, ran a 4.45. He could fit into cover 3, cover 4. He can play a lane. And then obviously the man coverage ability is what you're thinking about when it comes to Joey Porter Jr. So if Bill Belichick wants to turn back the clock and become more of a man press heavy team, be more man coverage focused, Joey Porter Jr. fits. If he wants to continue to play a lot of zone, I think Joey Porter Jr. is an awesome addition. And again, harkening back to my original point here, gives them someone who could be a legit CB1. Like Jonathan Jones is a good player, but at this point we would know if he was like shut down, clear cut number one guy. Same thing with, Jack Jones could take a step forward in year 2, but he was good last year. But I think part of that is also like he's good for a fourth rounder and a piece you can have be a part of that rotation and maybe a starter. So yeah, I'm gonna go Joey Porter Jr. here. I'd love off the tackle, but the top 3 gone. Gonna wait here. And Quentin Johnston also off the board. Could go Jackson Smith and Jigba, but you signed Juju Smith-Schuster. Feels like you're overlapping there in the slot, unless you really feel like JSN can move out wide. So because of the board, let's go Joey Porter Jr., and then we'll address some of those other positions that I've already mentioned in tomorrow and then Sunday's video. All right, next up, Green Bay Packers at pick 15. This is going to be where Nolan Smith comes off the board. It would make it 4 consecutive first-round picks out of Georgia for the Packers. Yeah, Eric Stokes, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, and then in this scenario, Nolan Smith. So be kind of an interesting storyline there, but high character guy that just feels like a Green Bay Packer. A little bit of a project when it comes to being a pass rusher. And I think part of that is also the Georgia defensive alignment where they put these guys on the edge. So maybe it's not as much of a project as we're kind of labeling it, but nevertheless, in a year's time, drafting Nolan Smith now opens up the door for them to move on from Preston Smith, save money, get cheaper at the position, and then have a really nasty 1-2 punch for Sean Gary, Nolan Smith, and then Kingsley and Agbury as that third guy in the mix. That becomes a really awesome trio, and all pretty young, and then you're another year's time away from Rashawn Gary having to work out that contract for him. So it's a relatively cheap group for at least a year. And then even after you pay Gary, the other 2 guys are cheap. So love this fit a ton. And yeah, I've said multiple times, like Lucas Van Ness and Nolan Smith, like 15 is kind of the hard cap for them in my books, unless they're both available at 15, in which one of these 2 guys is going to slip. But to me, I don't see that happening, and I wouldn't anticipate that happening on draft night. Next, I'm going to have the Washington Commanders take Devon Witherspoon here at 16. They need a clear-cut number 1 guy, and Witherspoon has that potential. To me, he also comes with the highest floor. So for a team that already has a nasty pass rush and, was kind of flirting with the playoff picture last year, could Sam Howell be an upgrade? Maybe. And if he is, then this team could certainly be in the playoffs. So having an NFL-ready guy like Devon Witherspoon makes a lot of sense. Also, a really willing tackler, hard hitter, kind of feels like it could be something that swings and sways the opinion of a former linebacker, Jack Del Rio, their defensive coordinator, and a former linebacker and their head coach, Ron Rivera. Those little things kind of weigh into my mind. I'm like, yeah, that's the type of stuff, and those are the type of traits that former players are going to like. And Witherspoon, again, I think comes with the highest floor. So he helps that defense right now. And man, if they get legitimately just one shutdown corner with the pass rush that they have, that defense is one of the best in the league. And the same can be said here about Pittsburgh, but because of the way the board's played out, top corners are gone, top 3 offensive tackles are gone. Where do they go? If I'm being realistic, I think the Steelers should take DeJuan Jones. I think that would be the Mike Tomlin route that he would want to take. I'm going to play my board here instead, which again, that's not really what I should be doing here in this mock, but I do want to get my opinions out there a little bit. It's my mock draft. I'll do what I want. Anton Harrison's my OT3. I actually have him ahead of Broderick Jones. Doesn't have the strength profile, but fluid mover and much more polished as a pass protector. And I think he can add strength to the NFL level. Like, I'm not really worried about these guys who need to bulk up because you get to the NFL level, you get in the gym, and it's a different beast versus what it was in college, which college in its own right is a different beast than high school, right? Like, it's just the nature of the game. So I'm anticipating that he gets a little bit more strength and a little bit more beef in his profile. Again, him not being someone who's yoked out of his mind and a high-level run blocker, that's why I think DeJuan Jones would be the pick here if it was up to Mike Tomlin. And I think, that would be their leaning. But to me, I saw Kenny Pickett rolling out right way too much last year. You need an upgrade over Dan Moore, specifically from a pass protection standpoint. And then maybe Dan Moore becomes, this solid, experienced young swing tackle, which that's valuable, and that's good to have on the roster. So you plug in Seumalo at left guard, you draft Anton Harrison, all of a sudden that left side of the offensive line is starting to look like a strengthened Pittsburgh, and then the rest of the pieces are at least, okay enough. Like, you have an average offensive line at worst, which for Pittsburgh fans, we've been waiting a couple years for the ability to say that, like, even just an average offensive line. So top 3 tackles, top 3 corners off the board. I'm going to opt to go Anton Harrison here and build the picket fence in Pittsburgh. That takes us to the Detroit Lions, and it is with great honor that I take Bijan Robinson here. Man, it would just be unfair to put Bijan behind that offensive line. It just really would. I said the same thing about the Eagles, but man, Detroit, to me, that O-line is right there with Philadelphia. And again, you're giving Ben Johnson, Quentin Johnston, and Bijan Robinson. Like, at this point, his job as the OC is relatively easy, but he's so interesting and unique, and he pulls off different things. He's having Penei Sewell be a swing tackle or pulling tackle, and he's so athletic that it works, right? Like, he's understanding the strength of his roster and the players that he has on that side of the ball and maximizing that. And give him Quentin Johnston. Let me see him maximize Quentin Johnston in the game that he brings to the table. Let me see him have Bijan Robinson in his hands. Let me see what that maximized potential looks like. And also, I could see here, and honestly, like, I don't think it'd be a bad idea either. If this pick were to be made, DeAndre Swift obviously becomes a logical trade candidate. And depending on what happens with Austin Eckler, like, I think the first call might be from the Chargers, which next week, by the way, I might do like Bijan to the Chargers. So let me know how you feel about that, LA fans. But nevertheless, I can see where if you're a Chargers fan, you have to trade Eckler, where you're like, hey, DeAndre Swift's a pretty close thing. If he can stay healthy, that's not a bad call. Let's hit up the Lions. And then the Lions could be like, hey, let's get a 3rd round pick this year. Or, I don't know if they'd really get a 3rd round pick this year for DeAndre Swift, but they could say, hey, don't worry about the 2023 draft. Give me a 3rd rounder in 2024. And a team like the Chargers could look at that and be like, hey, well, we get a piece now, and we need to win now, because Brandon Staley's trying to save his job now. And then be like, yeah, well, 2024, whatever. We'll pay that credit card bill at the end of the month, right? Like, we'll get there when we get there. And then year goes by, and it's like, oh, yeah, the Lions do have an extra 3rd round pick from that. Oh, yeah, from that DeAndre Swift trade. Wow, what a shrewd move from Brad Holmes. And I think Brad Holmes is one of the best GMs in football. I think that guy makes nothing but shrewd moves. So I could see them even being like, hey, don't worry about 2023. DeAndre Swift for a 2024 3rd rounder, which I know it's a long wait, but that's awesome value for a running back that's soon to be gone anyways. A 3rd round pick? No, you took him earlier than that, but he'll play out his rookie contract, still get a 3rd. That's spicy value. So anyways, getting back to the original point here, Bijan is better than DeAndre Swift. You might be able to get something for Swift, but also a 1-2 punch of Robinson and David Montgomery behind that offensive line. That's an explosive duo. And again, we're just giving Ben Johnson all the toys to play with in the playground. At 19, I'm going to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take Darnell Wright. So that's 5 offensive tackles off the board here in the first round. And in this situation, Wright I assume, would play right tackle. Tristan Wirfs flips over to the left side. Maybe it makes it easier to incentivize why they're going to pay him the bag that he's going to get when he becomes, once he's ready to negotiate his second contract. So that could play out, and maybe that's further justification and further rationale for Jason Light if Wirfs does make that flip. To me, right now, he's just the next best tackle on the board. And again, I don't have anything against DeJuan Jones. I like him. I just think he has a more glaring weakness, specifically in a offense that has a pocket passing quarterback, doesn't have that mobile QB factor, versus Darnell Wright. I don't have as big a concern there. Also, might be the strongest tackle in this class. I mean, like, he's DeJuan Jones, Broderick Jones, and then Darnell Wright. Like, those 3 guys have strength profiles that are really, really special. Multi-year starter, play on the left side, also flipped over to the right. I think he's protected a little bit by the Josh Heupel offense, but tackle's a huge need, staring me in the face here for Tampa Bay. So ultimately, I do think we're going to probably get somewhere between 5 to 6 tackles going in the first round. Anton Harrison's probably the one that's that 6th off the board, but I think we'll see the top 5 being, Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., Broderick Jones, DeJuan Jones, and Darnell Wright. I think those are going to be the 5, and then Harrison maybe sneaks in as the 6th. So 5 OTs here before pick 20. 20, not impossible. And again, it's a glaring need for Tampa Bay. And you got to give Baker / Kyle Trask at least a pseudo fair shot, right? So let's go ahead and draft a tackle here at 19. And then at 20, I'm actually going to have yet another trade. And again, more fun to think about versus like, do I think that they would end up doing this just because this is the deep tight end class and I'm kind of giving away some of what I think this pick is going to be. But I also think Seattle's always looking to make a move back. So let's have it be a pick swap of 20 and 28. Then we'll throw in 92. And that will allow Cincinnati to jump up to 20 here, get ahead of the Chargers, get ahead of Jacksonville, get ahead of the Cowboys. All teams that could maybe draft a tight end. And again, that is going to be what I do here. Michael Mayer, hometown kid, to me, still the best the best tight end in this class. No, he's not the athlete of Kincaid or Laporta or Kraft. He's not quite the blocker that Darnell Wright is. But man, he's just kind of the perfect marriage of all those skills. And yeah, he's not a great athlete, but 4.7. I mean, same thing TJ Hawkinson ran. Could you imagine drafting a better blocking TJ Hawkinson? I think a lot of teams would be excited about that. Shoot, the Vikings just traded multiple picks for TJ Hawkinson. Imagine if they could get a better blocking version of that. I think that's kind of what Michael Mayer is, but he's just smart, savvy, can work the middle of the field at a high level, good route runner, and I say this all the time. In a year's time, you're moving on from Tyler Boyd. Michael Mayer is kind of the exact guy. Dalton Kincaid could be in play here, but I think they would opt for Mayer's blocking ability over Kincaid, but his ability to work the middle of the field is a way you eventually replace Tyler Boyd in the production that you will lose when he departs. So the blocking ability plus that over the middle, Boyd future replacement, future insurance here makes Mayer a really interesting pick. The trade up, I know Bengals fans are not going to like that. I understand. We also have a pretty complete roster, so shedding a third rounder isn't the end of the world, and that was part of my justification for why they moved up to 20, try to leapfrog teams like the Chargers, the Cowboys, things like that. Anyways, speaking of the Chargers, they're on the clock here at 21. I'm going to stick with Zay Flowers being the move here. I just think this team still needs to add that speed element. And maybe Zay Flowers ultimately only becomes someone who works from the slot, but in a year's time, we're going to be talking about Keenan Allen with a cap hit north of $30 million. So the same dance and song we were, dancing and singing a couple months ago, or a few weeks ago, really, about Keenan Allen, is he going to be a Charger? They're going to let him go, yada, yada, yada. We're going to be saying the same stuff next offseason. So, and at that point, that becomes a really tough cap number to try to work around. So this could be your eventual Keenan Allen replacement, but also just add that speed, add that over-the-top element that this team, I think, is sorely lacking right now. Other directions you can go here. Last week we went edge. Tight end could be in play for sure. But to me, let's just add that speed wide receiver. Zay Flowers has that deep route running about him, and also a great gadget weapon. Really dangerous in the slot because get the ball in his hands. This guy is twitchy, awesome movement skills, not only speed-wise, but agility-wise. This guy had an awesome 10-yard shuttle. So, yeah, I think he just kind of provides the one missing element in that wide receiver room right now for the Chargers. And I like Josh Palmer, but I just don't think he's quite that long speed guy that Zay Flowers is. Next up, Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to have them take Deonte Banks. We had Banks fall a little bit here. I've pretty much week in and week out had Deonte Banks somewhere in the top 20, but here he falls just a little bit. And also, like the Ravens, I'm kind of in a wait and see holding pattern here because, Lamar Jackson requests a trade, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is legit. Like, maybe this is actually going to happen. And maybe they'll get picks, go quarterback, and then wide receiver here, or they'll go quarterback. But anyways, I've gone wide receiver pretty heavy here. And because I don't know the direction this offense is heading, I wanted to just change it up a little bit, go corner. Deonte Banks would be a phenomenal fit in that defense. High-end athlete, has man coverage written all over him. 4'3", 6 foot, 220. And you see it on tape, too. Like, this guy is the making of being a really good man coverage corner. Maybe the ball skills aren't totally there, but I think with some refinement, he'll be okay. Like, I think that's something that's correctable. And also, he'd be playing second fiddle to Marlon Humphrey. So it's not even like you're drafting this guy and giving him the hardest assignment. No, he has one of the best corners in football on the other side of the field. So it's a good situation for him to step into as well. Next, Minnesota. I'm going to have a trade here. Minnesota was a team where I was originally really looking to try to fetch them 2-2s. Just kind of letting you inside my mind here. I was trying to fetch them 2 second rounders and then take Hendon Hooker with one of those second, but I'm going to have Hooker go elsewhere instead in the second round. And what we're going to do here is 31 plus 95 going to 23. It's about perfect. In the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, you could maybe throw in 122 if you really feel like it. And, in a perfect world for me, the Chiefs have Kadarius Toney working to the slot because he was so dangerous doing that at Florida. But, I mean, why not just get a Juju Smith-Schuster upgrade if Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to linger on the board like he has in this scenario? I still think he's the first wide receiver off the board, if I'm being completely honest. I think it has fully become, I don't want to say solidified, but feels more likely than not that he will be. But, man, crazier things have happened, right? And if he falls just enough and Kansas City gets in striking distance and it's only a third-round pick, I could see them being like, yeah, we'll play Tony on the outside. He's shown that he can do that. I go back to his rookie year against Dallas, showcased a little bit more contested catch ability, went at the catch point ability than what he showed at Florida, just because he was working out of the slot. He's a good athlete. We can use him in the gadget, department. Marcus Valdez-Scantling is going to play on the outside anyways. Sky Moore, I think, probably best suited in the slot, but could play outside if need be. I think this makes this offense insane. And again, it's not just like replacing Juju Smith-Schuster. I'd argue it might be a better player than Juju Smith-Schuster. So, and of course, younger and cheaper than what it would be to pay a veteran wide receiver. So this would be lethal. If you're a Chiefs fan, you're probably not crazy about moving up and giving up a third rounder, but if it's for JSN, let me know. Like, would this be like one of the few players you'd be cool with? Because I feel like it should be. Anyways, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I have to note here, this took everything in my body to not make this pick Brian Branch. I think next week, if the board played out the same way, it would be Brian Branch. But I wanted to have him go elsewhere, and it's actually the next pick to the Giants. But O'Cyrus Torrence, an automatic upgrade over Ben Barch. We'll see how Walker Little fares at right tackle. That could certainly be in play. And hey, maybe this is our sixth offensive tackle landing spot. DeJuan Jones. Wouldn't doubt that whatsoever. But let's just try to get that upgrade on the interior offensive line. And also, an O-line that was pretty good as a pass blocking unit, but left something to be desired as a run blocking squad, and I think O'Cyrus Torrence changes that a ton. To me, the best guard in this class. I think he's going to go in the first round. But, I think here at 24 is actually pretty solid value for him. But it's always tough to gauge where these interior offensive line guys are going to go. But he's not going to be the only interior offensive lineman here in the first round. But anyways, we'll come back to that point a little bit later on. New York Giants, I'm going to give him Brian Branch. Kind of a seamless Julian Love replacement, but also like more man coverage ability than I think Love has. So therefore, he's kind of a better Wink Martindale version of Julian Love. So the fit to me kind of stood out, and it's really interesting. I'd rather see the Jags be the pick. I'd rather see Branch be the pick to the Jags, but wanted to do something different again, trying to make these mocks a little different week to week. And yeah, this guy, great tackler, could be used as a blitzer, which we know Wink Martindale wants to do primarily from his linebackers in the inside, but could get creative and do some stuff like that with Brian Branch. Also, great man coverage guy playing from the inside. And also, you could have some safety versatility, move him around, and make him a full weapon in that defense. So I think this would be awesome to see him paired up with Wink Martindale, a guy who is one of the best players in this class, even had the best combine, and maybe a little overlooked because of his position. But to me, again, one of the top 10 players in this class, and I'd love to see him go to a defense led by one of the best DCs in football, Wink Martindale. Next, the Dallas Cowboys at pick number 26. This is going to be a potentially controversial one. I'm going to go Brian Brzee. I've had some mock draft reactions where I'm like, they're not going edge. But defensive interior is a little different. And I was even looking at Neville Gallimore, who's currently listed as their nose tackle in Dallas, and he's like 6'2", 305. And I'm like, well, Brian Brzee is 6'5", 308 or somewhere thereabout. And he's a much better athlete. And I also think he gives you a lot more immediately as a run defender, which, you add Stephon Gilmore, you already have a gaudy pass rush. The weakness of that defense could potentially be them as a run defense because, lockdown corners, pass rush again. So if they can solidify that, I feel really, really good about it. But also with how Dan Quinn uses movement across the defensive line, uses those stunts, uses those twists, with how good of an athlete Brian Brzee is, that defensive scheme will buy him time to become a more refined pass rusher, figure out what his movesets are going to be, how he's going to stack and challenge offensive linemen, how he's going to play chess with the guard, those sorts of things. But with those stunts and twists, it's someone that big, there are a few that move the way that Brzee does, and offensive linemen are going to struggle with that. But again, the main idea here was like, yeah, they could get better on the inside, stopping the run. He could be an upgrade over Neville Gallimore, and also like Osa Odigizua and Brian Brzee, that's a really interesting 1-2 punch. They both kind of perfectly fit what Quinn wants to do, moving his defensive linemen around because they're both really good athletes. But again, Brzee gives you an upgrade as a run defender, but also it feels like a really good fit and a good athletic D tackle to add into that D line that moves around a lot. And it makes sense for him because buys him a year or two, kind of figure it out as a pass rusher. So if you're a Cowboys fan, let me know. I know tight end, running back are probably more appealing. Even with Bijan off the board here, I really did consider Jahmyr Gibbs. We're going to go running back later on. I think that's going to be in the Sunday video. So if you're looking for running back here, definitely come back, check out that video. But I wanted to do something a little different here, and I don't think I've mocked Brzee to Dallas yet. So let me hear your thoughts down below. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to give them Miles Murphy. I mean, this has just been the edge rusher we've seen Brandon Beane take 4 times already now. High-end athletes, and yeah, he's maybe a little different than someone like a Boogie Basham, who to me didn't feel as insane of an athlete, but felt more NFL ready and had a good Senior Bowl. he's more in line of the Greg Rousseau, right? Like the traits and the size, there's a lot to be excited about there. But man, when it comes to the on-field production and what you know of them as a pass rusher, work in progress. And unfortunately, Rousseau didn't take that step forward last year. And really, this pass rush, once Von Miller went down, it just evaporated. It went elsewhere. So if it's going to continue to be an issue, continue to try to address it. And Myles Murphy, I mean, this is a guy 2 months ago was still somewhere in the top 10, top 12, and still there's mocks now where he's going somewhere in that vicinity. So you get him here at 27. This is some great value. And again, you're just trying to find an answer at a position that continues to evade you. So back half the first round, there's not many positions you're going to find better position value at than Myles Murphy here to Buffalo. And again, try to find an answer there because also not going to have Von Miller forever, so maybe Myles Murphy is a long-term answer while also addressing an immediate area of need. The Seattle Seahawks, after the trade down, I'm going to give them John Michael Schmitz. Feels like one of these centers is going to go round one, and I've been saying for a while that I think the top 3 centers go in the top 60. That's not quite going to happen in this. I'm going to have Weipler go just outside the top 60, so I'm breaking my rule there, but one to play with some different fits and different ideas. Ultimately, draft night, I think 3 centers are off the board before we get to the third round. And it could start with John Michael Schmitz or maybe even Joe Tippmann going here round one. Seattle desperately needs a center. John Michael Schmitz, good movement skills, but also a mean streak about him, plays with enough power. And I think he becomes a really good fit for that offensive line and kind of finish it off. I think you can get better than Damian Lewis. I think you can do better than Phil Haynes. But with Schmitz there in between, really good tackles or at least promising tackles, that offensive line's at least average, which I think that's the healthy place to be at. And then you have a good running back, and then hopefully Geno Smith picks up where he left off a season ago. Then at 29, I'm going to have the New Orleans Saints take Kalijah Kancey, the next best defensive lineman available, and just gives him that juice as a pass rusher that they're kind of missing right now. And we are going to go edge at 40, but I do wonder if Kancey was the pick here, given that he's 6 foot 280, could you move him out wide and have him just be a situational edge rusher? Could it be someone who does both? That could be interesting. We haven't really seen someone like that in New Orleans. But yeah, they also have a decent amount of beef. I wish they still had David Onyemata on the roster because they're kind of missing that run-stopping nose tackle, that two-gapping, plugging D-tackle. I know it's a 4-3 front and a 4-3 base, but Sanders I don't think is fully the answer there. Maybe he could be. But if Sanders can be that run-stopping D-tackle, Kancey's the pass rush specialist, and maybe flexible to move out wide, that becomes really, really interesting. You're drafting a guy here that's explosive as it gets in this class, but also has a refined move set, knows how to play chess with an offensive lineman, and is NFL ready. And the Saints are looking to win games pretty much right away. You bring in Derek Carr for a reason, right? Like, you want to be competitive and you want to win the NFC South this year. And I think Kalijah Kancey gives you someone that helps you do that. Then at 30, I'm going to have Adetomiwa Adebawore be the pick here for the Philadelphia Eagles. 4-3, defensive flexibility, play end or play on the inside, which I'm really, really interested in. And he's been a big time riser throughout, this draft process, the combine, Senior Bowl, almost like 34-inch arms, runs a 4.49 at 280 pounds. And you even look at the tape, like the guy plays with strength and he's short, but because of his arm length, guards have a hard time getting to him. Primarily played on the inside at Northwestern, but I do think he has the flexibility to move out wide and play on the edge. So maybe this is your Brandon Graham replacement in a year's time, or maybe he's someone who helps serve and replace the production lost in Javon Hargrave. I could see it working out either way, but defensive line and offensive line. That's what we've done here in the first round for Philadelphia. That's about as Howie Roseman as it could possibly get. All right, final pick of the first round video. I'm going to have Jordan Addison go in the first round to Minnesota. That's probably the lowest I've had him go. I don't think I've had him slip into the second round just yet, but this would be an awesome addition for Minnesota. It's similar to like Lewis Cine last year, where I think they could have taken him where they were originally supposed to pick, but because of the trade down, well, granted, they traded back from 12, so probably not Cine, but they could have gone secondary at 12, and I wouldn't have been shocked. Like a Trent McDuffie, to me, kind of felt like a possibility. And then they moved back and then drafted another secondary player and garner extra picks. Same, but different here. And, the pick would have been Addison for me at 23. That or maybe getting interesting with a different corner. Or maybe even cheeky with a quarterback, who knows. But Addison gives you that number 2 receiver that this offense is now lacking. I like KJ Osborne, but I don't think he's a number 2. And Thielen had taken a step back last year. He's losing a step. So you kind of felt that it was Justin Jefferson, kind of dealing with the weight of the world on his shoulders in that offense. So getting him some help, getting him a running mate who, 4.49 40, not great. Yeah, he's a little light, which is giving me a little bit of Jerry Jeudy vibes where this guy might get bumped off the route. I could see you having a hard time in contested catch situations, which has really kind of plagued Jerry Jeudy. So maybe those concerns are there, but the harder skills getting open. And Jordan Addison does that at an extremely high rate. So him plus Justin Jefferson, those are two of the best route runners in their respective draft classes, and it would give you an awesome route running duo there on the outside and give this offense some more juice that it desperately needs. But guys, that is going to do it for the round 1 video of this 3-round mock draft. Be sure to come back tomorrow with round 2. Then Sunday is going to be round 3. But leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. Who's your favorite team? Do you like the picks I gave your squad? Who went too high? Who went too low? Whether you like the pick or not, I'd love to hear your rationale why you feel that way down below in the comments section. But hopefully you all enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you did. If you're right here, want to see more draft content and more football coverage in general, hit that big red subscribe button. But that is going to do it for me. Be sure to come back tomorrow for round 2. But until then, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.